Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the Spectra Stack Modular Tape Library. I'm Bob Cohn, and I'll be emceeing our webinar this morning. We will be taking questions during the web, so feel free to use your chat box or the question box and write those in, and time allowing, we will answer all of them at the end of the webinar. To walk us through the Spectra Stack Tape Library, and I'll just say even before we start, we've had a tremendous response to this product offering. I think it speaks very loudly to the incredible growth path that we've seen through LTO tape with new LTO 8, giving us even greater capacity and greater performance in a really small area, bodes well for something like a stackable tape library. So today, to walk us through the webinar, we have Mr. Matt Ninesling, who is Senior Director of Engineering at Spectra, and he is going to step us through this new introduction and hopefully answer any questions you may have about it. Matt, are you with us?
I am. Thanks, Bob.
Take it away.
So, thank you. So, as Bob said, today we're going to focus primarily on Spectra Stack and then go over a couple of other tape updates at the end as well. So, the new Spectra Stack Tape Library is a new tape library system from Spectra Logic. It was designed to be very modular, very easy to use, and give users a big wide range of choices as far as drives, capacity, and scalability. So when we designed the Spectra Stack, we wanted to focus on being able to offer something that you could start out with at a very small system, as low as 10 slots in a 6U chassis, but grow that system all the way up through an entire 42U rack. So with Spectra Stack, we've achieved that goal. The stack can grow between 10 and 560 slots. That's starting with a 6U control module, and it can go from 1 to 42 LTO drives. It's also very easy to use and very easy to install and service. So we've made it so that customers can do a lot of those things on their own if they want to, and reduce the hassle of having to wait for someone to come on site or to wait for parts to arrive. The Spectra Stack starts with a 6U control module. That control module can have from 10 to 80 slots and from 6 half-height to 3 full-height tape drives. That is something that's unique with Spectra Stack in that we support both full-height and half-height drives in the Spectra Stack Tape Library. The control module also comes with the LCD panel on the front, so you can do all management from the front of the library. And it comes with the main library controller. You can add up to 6 expansion modules, which will fill a full 42U rack. Each expansion module also has up to 80 slots and either 6 full-height or 6 half-height or 3 full-height tape drives. You start with a control module and you can grow 3 expansion modules above and 3 expansion modules below. With a full stack of Spectra Stack tape libraries, you'll have 560 tape slots, which is almost 7 petabytes of data in an uncompressed format. So even though it's just a rack mount library, it can still grow to a very large capacity. It was also designed to house up to 42 half-height tape drives. So in some environments, there's a demand for very high performance. And with Spectra Stack, we can go up to 12.6 gigabytes per second with LTO 8 in an uncompressed format, which can meet almost any workflow that someone needs, especially with a rack mount tape library system. Spectra Stack was also designed to be as simple as possible. So it is user installable, user expandable, and user serviceable. This means that you can buy a new Spectra Stack library and install the control module and have it up and running in 30 to 45 minutes. As you want to add expansion modules in the future, they're also very easy to install and can be done by an end user. And they can be done in under 30 minutes, powered up and back into operation. So it's a very simple process. You basically take the module out of the rack, install the rack kit in the rack, slide the module into the rack kit, plug it in, and turn it on. It recognizes that there's a new chassis attached. It scans the inventory, and it's up and ready to go. It was also designed to be user serviceable. So we have our ASM, Assisted Self-Maintenance Program, that works with Spectra Stack. We have on-site support, and we have some options for users to do some service themselves. So when we talk about user serviceable, as with all the other SpectraLogic tape libraries, the Spectra Stack was designed so that users could go in and replace parts on their own. And part of that program is called Assisted Self-Maintenance, which is ASM. And that includes a spare parts kit that sits on site with the product so that if anything ever happens, if a tape drive goes bad, if a robot has an issue, you as an end user can take the part out that's having the problem and replace it with an on-site spare in under 15 minutes. And this goes for drives, controllers, power supplies, robotics, all of the main parts that work in any kind of a tape library system and could ever have an issue over time. We also include all of our standard support offerings. So you can have next business day support, you can have 4-hour on-site, and with either one of those, you can also add 7x24 phone support and ASM. So there's a lot of different options depending on what you need and what level of service you require in your environment. All the Spectra tape libraries have a software application called Bluescale. And Bluescale is the software that runs on the library that lets you do all management and control operations. With the Spectra Stack, we've developed Blue Vision software, and we've taken all the main functionality from Bluescale and we've adapted it to work really well with the new Spectra Stack. So it has a very easy to use, intuitive user interface that can be accessed either via the color LCD on the front of the library or remotely through a web interface. And they are the same interface, the same software application. So you see the same screens, whether you log on the front or whether you remote in from the web interface. We've also allowed Blue Vision to scale all the way up to 20 partitions. So this library can be installed in an area where you need a lot of different applications talking to the library, or where you're doing different types of migration from older tape technologies onto newer tape technologies. We've included our standard capacity on demand feature where you can add tape slots in up to as small as 10 slot increments. So you can grow that capacity over time, and you can really, add the investment as needed. You don't have to buy things, slots up front and all the hardware up front if you don't need it today. You can buy it in the future as needed. That goes for both slots and chassis. So you can always start with a control module and add expansion modules as needed down the road. So that capital investment can be spread out over time. Spectra Stack also includes SpectraLogic's MLM, Media Lifecycle Management functionality, and it works with all of our certified media. So that and Spectra Standard Encryption are two features that will be available in Q3. We're doing all the final testing on those now. But when those are released, even if you buy a Spectra Stack now with certified media, you'll be able to put the tapes in the library, and we'll be adding the health diagnostics to the tape over time, even though it's not displayed on the front panel. As soon as you do a software upgrade in Q3, all the tape health from day one will be displayed for all the tapes in the library once that software upgrade is applied. We'll also support standard encryption, which for SpectraLogic is a feature where we can do all of the encryption key management on board the library, so you don't need any separate license server, support contracts, any of those things. And with Spectra Standard Encryption, that is something that comes free with the product. You don't have to pay anything extra for the licensing or the key management functionality. It will also work with all tapes that were encrypted previously on SpectraLogic products. So you can take tapes from any of our older products, put them in a Spectra Stack, and we can read the encryption keys and get the data off the tapes. Spectra Stack also will support KMIP and ESKM in the Blue Vision software, and it has a lot of built-in diagnostics. So if you ever do experience any kind of issues, there are quite a few diagnostics to determine if it's something going on with robotics or drives, or even an interconnect with the host software. Importing and exporting tapes on the Spectra Stack also works really well. Every module, control modules and expansion modules, have a 10-slot entry-exit port on the right hand of the chassis. That can be used as either an EE port for importing and exporting, or it can be locked through the software and used for storage slots. So you have the capability to use those 10 slots either way. You can also unlock the full set of magazines on either the right hand or the left hand side of every control or expansion module, which allows you to slide out the full set of tapes, which is 40 tapes on either side, if you want to do bulk load or unload. Spectra Stack also supports all types of media. So we can actually support back to LTO5 drives, which lets you read back to LTO3 media. That means that you can use media all the way from LTO3 to LTO8 currently in a Spectra Stack. With things like LTO3, LTO4, we recognize that you may have some legacy tapes in your environment, and this gives you a good way to create a partition, move those tapes into the Spectra Stack, and then migrate them to newer tape technology or expire them over time, without having to keep multiple tape products on your floor. Spectra Stack also fully supports LTO Type M media, which we found is the most cost-effective way to store data on tape today. So LTO-M gets you all the way to 9 terabytes on an LTO-7 tape when used in an LTO-8 drive and written in Type M format. Spectra Stack also uses all Spectra certified media so that you can have MLM functionality and track the health of all those tapes over time. And with certified media, we also offer some great features in terms of we add all the barcodes. We can do custom barcodes to any sequence you want. We fully warranty all Spectra certified media tapes for life. So if you ever have an issue with the tape, we will replace it with basically no questions asked. And we do a lot of pre-screening and verification of the tapes to make sure that all tapes that leave our facility are the highest quality they could possibly be. We've also added a Blue Vision camera. So we found that in some remote data centers, users want to be able to log in and actually see if their robot's doing something or not, or if there's anything going on with the tape library. The Blue Vision camera does use an additional 1U on top of the Spectra Stack library. So it sits on the very top, depending on how large of a configuration you have. And it still fits within a standard 19-inch rack when fully expanded. You typically have about an additional U on top inside the top panel of the rack. We've also tested Spectra Stack against all of the standard ISV software platforms that are on the market, and it works seamlessly with all of them, as well as all of our Black Pearl and cloud options that we have that we can sell with the Spectra Stack library. So we've completed all that ISV testing, and we've also completed all the testing with Black Pearl, and that allows you to use all the Black Pearl clients, as well as all of the additions to Black Pearl, including NAS attach, archive disk with our Arctic Blue product, and attaching to a public cloud. And then you can archive back to a Spectra Stack as well. This product, we realize, is still a rack mount tape library, but we did design it to work in a full 24/7 duty cycle environment. We've tested it to over 3 million mean cycles between failure, and the mechanical life of over 1 million on all individual components in the robotic system. So it's a very reliable product. It's made to be, put in place and used, in a very high duty cycle environment for a very long period of time. We also recognize that tape inherently is very power efficient, but we wanted the Spectra Stack to also be as efficient as possible. So we've included 80+ silver rated power supplies in the Spectra Stack library. It has lots of built-in diagnostics, and it's also easy to replace any module within a full rack of Spectra Stacks without taking the whole thing apart. So you can slide out an individual controller expansion module, replace a component within that module, the robotics, the drives, the power supplies, or the entire module itself without messing with any of the other modules within the rack. With Spectra Stack, we also are introducing a new program called Migration Pass. And what Migration Pass allows you to do is take existing LTO drives from either older SpectraLogic libraries or other existing tape libraries on the market, put them into a Spectra Stack drive sled, and then use them in the product. This is meant for migration purposes so that you can take older drives, move them into the Spectra Stack, move the tapes from your older tape library into the Spectra Stack, create a partition that uses that data and allows you to migrate it to newer drives over time or to expire it as needed. Because we offer up to 20 partitions, it's very simple to have many different environments that all attach to a single Spectra Stack library. And that means it's transparent to the application. So each application only sees the available tapes within that partition as if it was its own separate tape library sitting on your floor. So with Migration Path, we'll give you a free SLS license, which allows you to create those partitions. We will also give you 2 hours of migration consultation, which is phone support from one of our professional services technicians, and they'll help step you through that process and make sure that it goes smoothly for you. And we will allow you to use all the way back to LTO5 drives, and that's either fiber or SAS, which allows you to use read tapes LTO3 and newer, all within the same Spectra Stack library. As with all of our other tape products, we also still offer Trance Kill with Spectra Stack. So if you buy a Spectra Stack library and you grow it up to 560 slots and you realize that you need more capacity, you need a larger system, we'll use the same Trance Kill process where we can use the same drives, the same media, take those out of the Spectra Stack, put them into a T950 or a Tfiniti, and let you continue to grow over time and protect that investment that you made up front without having to start from scratch again. That's worked really well for SpectraLogic for a very long period of time, and that process works great with Spectra Stack as well. So kind of some key takeaways with Spectra Stack is it was designed for a 24/7 operation. It's 100% duty cycle. You don't have to, there's no limit on the number of cycles or loads you can do per day. It's made to work with all the LTO drives from LTO5 through LTO8. It can go up to 42 tape drives, so that's unique here. And it uses both half-height and full-height tape drives. You're not limited to one type of drive or the other. Full tape drives have a little bit better reliability metrics on them. Half-height tape drives are lower cost, and you can also put twice as many in a system. So if you need very high throughput, half-height drives can allow you to get to much higher throughput than half as many full-height drives. We include all of our Blue Vision software on the Spectra Stack. There's no extra charges. There's no licensing for any of those features. And you can attach your Spectra Stack to Black Pearl and create an object storage environment for tape. So we also wanted to go through a quick refresher on T950V today. Over the past 10 to 12 years, we've offered the T950 tape library. The T950 has really been kind of the workhorse in our tape product line. It fits in a great position, going from anywhere from 950 all the way up to 10,000 tapes. It's very cost effective, and it has a very well proven robotics and reliability systems that we've managed to really fine tune over time. We've had multiple enhancements of T950, and we've used its architecture to create the Tfiniti product for the exascale type data centers. With T950V, we're taking the T950 and we're adding basically a cost reduction to it. So T950V has all the basic features of T950, but we've changed it so it has slightly less appealing cosmetics. You can see there's one window on the left side instead of 3 on the T950. It has a single tap on the front, TerraPack access port, where you import and export tapes instead of a dual tap on the T950. We've removed the back doors from the T950V because we found that many data centers that these products go into, people don't need to lock the back doors. And we've also added the ability to support half-height drives in the T950V as well as full-height drives. So with half-height drives, it also gives us the ability to support SAS drives in a large enterprise type library. And we've found that SAS drives are lower cost for the drive itself, but also the infrastructure involved with adding SAS drives to your environment is quite a bit less. So SAS HBAs, switches, direct attach, all those pieces are lower cost with SAS than they are with fiber. The downsides to SAS are you can really only go to about 3 meters of cable length, which works really well if you're going in between 2 racks or a rack next to a T950V. It doesn't work well if you're going across an entire data center, so we still offer fiber channel as well. But this is a unique feature that T950V will have that most other products in its space will not. And that takes us to the end of the presentation today. I wanted to ask if there were any questions and go over anything else that anyone else had.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Bob back here. Yes, quite a few questions have been written in, and I anticipate more will come in as we go. So feel free to keep typing away, and I'll pose these to Matt. I'll take them for the most part in order, but some of them are kind of multiple questions around the same thing. So when we first started out, one of the points you made, Matt, was around the serviceability of Spectra Stack, and quite a few questions came in on that. So some of them along the lines of a comment, would that be a customer self-upgrade to Bluescale? That used to be a support task. So I think this is an existing customer working with Bluescale, the operating system for our other libraries. Now, this is Blue Vision, based on Bluescale, that runs on Spectra Stack. But what about that? If they have to do a software upgrade or a firmware upgrade, is that something that a user could do?
Yep, it absolutely is. So as an end user, you'll be able to log into the support portal, the Spectra support portal, download the new Blue Vision software package, and upgrade it to the Spectra Stack. You can do that either via a USB key or through the remote interface into the library if you store that new software package on a server or on a desktop somewhere in your environment. It's a very simple software upgrade process. It's a couple of button clicks, and then it upgrades. It usually takes somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes to do an upgrade, depending on how large of a system you have in place.
Okay, great. And we got two questions that I'm going to kind of mix together. One says, for customer service, what would you do if a tape jammed? And then another question is, where was it? How much on-site support would be available? Now, that might have come up before you covered those support licenses, but just from a high level, let's make clear that even though the Spectra Stack was designed to be user supportable and upgradable, you can still have full on-site engineering support if that's what you choose, correct?
Yep, so we offer next business day on-site support or 4-hour on-site support. So if you want to make sure that you have someone, a technician on-site within 4 hours, you can upgrade to 4-hour on-site. Either of those, you can add 24/7 phone support, so you can call SpectraLogic anytime. Our entire support organization sits here in Boulder, Colorado, just down the hall from our engineering organization. So 24/7 by 365, you're going to get someone in this building where I'm sitting that's worked on all these tape products, that really understands how they work, and they're going to be able to help you through any problem that you have.
Okay, so let's take that tape. Yeah, let's take that tape jam thing. What happens? Say we've got a camera in there. Maybe we can even see this happen remotely. What would you do?
So there is a way through the software package to force an unload. So we will try to force an unload. If the tape is truly stuck, where something happened and something failed within the drive and the leader is stuck inside the drive canister, in those situations, you're going to have to remove the drive from the library. You're going to want to call your SpectraLogic support contact, and they're going to be able to walk you through trying to take the tape out of the drive manually. If that doesn't work, you're going to send the drive back to SpectraLogic. We will remove the tape, and we will send the tape back to you, and we will send you a replacement drive at the same time.
And if you have that ASM kit and you have parts on site, you would just simply take the drive out and pop in the new one while you deal with the defective one, correct?
Yep. And then you deal with the defective one on the side, and we would send a replacement drive the same day you call, and you would send the drive with the stuck tape back to us, basically in the package that your replacement drive, your ASM drive, comes in.
Gotcha. And for people new to SpectraLogic or our product offerings, we have done this assisted self-maintenance with replaceable parts through all of our tape library lines. So this is not something new. I would say what is new is the ease of which you can install and configure these units. And a question came in that said, how realistic is a 45-minute setup time? So again, this doesn't require engineers on site. We can do installation, but certainly not required. Matt, I know I've played with these things in the lab, so I have my opinion. Let's hear yours. How realistic is a 45-minute setup time?
It's very realistic, actually. So when we designed Spectra Stack, we came out with it, and some of our first tests were to take, with very little documentation, and give a single control module. with the, all packaged up with all the rack kit and the correct parts installed, to some of our PS engineers. They were able to take it out of the box, install it, and turn it on and have it up and running. Maybe not fully configured, depending on how extensive a configuration you have, number of partitions and that kind of thing, but powered up and using the product within half an hour, with really no instructions and no hand holding at all. It's very intuitive and it's very simple. There are a couple of screws that require a Phillips screwdriver. I think there's 6, and outside of that, everything is completely touchless. No tools required for the entire install.
And guys, I will back that up. I actually went down with some marketing guys to take some pictures of one of the early units as we put it into our own data center, and we were able to rack mount it and get it fired up and rolling. We didn't configure any software, but we're able actually to do it all on our own. So very, very simple unit to work with. Next question, Matt. It says, does each expansion unit have its own robot, and what is the tape mount speed? So you described, starting with a single control module, I think you referred to it as, and then these expansion modules. What does the robotic system look like throughout that build process?
Yep. So there is a single robot in the Spectra Stack Tape Library, and it will go from the base module all the way up to this very top module. It transitions between those on a climber gear that makes it very reliable from a transition standpoint between the 2 gear racks. So there's kind of 2 different gear drive systems there, one within the chassis and then one to transition between chassis. The tape mount speed does vary depending on how many chassis you have installed, because that vertical travel is going to be different depending on what slot and what drive you're going to. But you can go and do a full cycle in right around 45 seconds is worst case. So 45 to 50 seconds is worst case. I also wanted to make clear, every chassis does have its own power supplies, every control and expansion chassis. That's something we didn't go through. And it comes standard with a single power supply, and a second power supply can be added to every chassis for full redundancy on the power side as well.
Okay, that's a good lead into our next question. It says, will this stack product replace several other products from small to large? Would this be a viable replacement for an existing single cabinet T950? So, and Matt covered the T950 at the end of this presentation. This came in a little earlier. For those of you who are not as familiar with the Spectra product, that is one of our larger tape libraries, about the size of a refrigerator, takes about a tile and a half off the data center floor, can have up to 950 tape slots in a single rack, can expand out to 8 racks. So it can be a very large unit. So Matt, how would you compare Spectra Stack to some of the other tape libraries all the way up to our really large tape libraries?
Yep. So when you compare a Spectra Stack to a T950, the Spectra Stack obviously can't scale near as large, so its max capacity is going to be 560 tapes. If you have a T950 and you're never going to grow above 300 or 400 tapes, then Spectra Stack could be a good option, and you could say that you're going to go to a smaller system in that case. If you think you're ever going to go above 450 to 500 tapes, you're kind of growing right up to the top of that headroom within a Spectra Stack, and you probably want to stick with the T950 because it'll let you expand all the way up to 950 slots in that base cabinet, and then you can start adding expansion chassis to it and go all the way out to 10,000 slots if you ever needed to. So it really depends on what your environment looks like. Right now, Spectra Stack is not replacing any tape libraries. It is an addition to the tape library line, and it gives us a new platform that is more expandable, that is a little bit easier to service in some cases, but we aren't currently planning on end-of-lifing any of the other ones right now.
Gotcha. So, guys, this brings up a very interesting sort of thing that you just have to look deeply at. There's not a quick, simple answer to it. The robotic performance on the T950 is going to be faster. The way tapes are moved, use a TerraPack so that 10 tapes could be moved at a time. So there's a lot to look at as to what it is you want to do, and that's the beauty of Spectra Stack. It's opening up a lot of new options. Are you drive heavy? Do you want a tremendous number of drives for performance, or are you tape heavy? Are you exchanging a lot of tapes? That might lead you towards one versus the other. So definitely a good question to bring up. I was glad that was put in there. All right, next up, is there a cam on the robotic arm? You mentioned the camera, the Blue Vision camera, and the question is that on the actual robotic arm?
No, there's no camera on the actual robot. The Blue Vision camera is mounted to the very top of the Spectra Stack library, depending on what that is, either a control module or expansion module. And with it, you can see down into the library. There's no cameras on board the robot itself.
Okay, this is an interesting cost of T50E. Okay, so again, for those of you not familiar with us, the Spectra T50E is one of our smaller tape libraries. It was the smallest before we introduced Spectra Stack, anywhere from 10 to 50 tapes up to 4 tape drives. And the question is cost of T50E versus Spectra Stack at entry level. So Matt, I know you don't carry price lists as much heading up our engineering group, but what would you say about entry level? Does the Spectra Stack at its smallest start at a lower price point, a higher price point? What would you say about that?
So when we designed Spectra Stack, we did try to design it so that our very entry level units, so say with a single LTO7 SAS drive and only 10 to 40 slots enabled, could be a lower price point than T50E. In terms of exactly, the price that you're gonna start with, you're gonna need to work with your sales rep on that, but it will start at a lower price point list price than a T50E does.
Gotcha. Okay, so and if you guys want, if anyone wants an actual quote for our library side by side, feel free to reach out to spectralogic.com. Our sales guys will get on that right away. Another question along these lines was, is there any buyback on current gear? And I'm assuming that's current SpectraLogic gear. But one thing that might not have come out as clearly, Matt, when you were speaking is the fact that we can take existing tape drives out of our own tape libraries that you own or out of other manufacturers' tape libraries, and we can migrate those actual physical tape drives into a Spectra tape library. I don't know of any other manufacturer on the market that's doing that. Can you say a few words about that? Say someone's got a Quantum box or an Oracle box or a Spectra box, and they've got LTO tape drives in there. What would that look like?
Yep. So we are still testing that full matrix of tape drives that we find out on the market and making sure that everything does work. And there will be some drives that won't work in a Spectra Stack, but almost all LTO drives will. So if you took something like a Quantum tape drive from a Quantum tape library, it would have to be removed from the Quantum drive sled, installed into a SpectraLogic Spectra Stack drive sled, and then used in the Spectra Stack library. We're still finalizing a few of the details of the migration pass program in terms of what the options are to be able to possibly add that drive to a support contract or not. But that drive could be used in the Spectra Stack for migration purposes to be able to read those old tapes and move data either from them to new tapes or access the data on those tapes until you can expire them. Which, beautiful. Like you said, I don't believe anyone else offers that feature.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with a term Matt used, a drive sled, that's the bracket that not only holds the drive in place in the tape library, but also provides the power feed and a few things like that. So the drive would in essence be resled, and that is something that can even happen in the field, a pretty straightforward and simple process.
Yep.
All right, let's see.
Real quick, back to that original question. You can also work with a SpectraLogic sales rep, and we typically do have trade-in programs so that you can trade an existing tape library in or get a discount on a new library by transitioning from an older library to a new one. So that option is definitely still available as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot to circle back on that one. All right, we're getting closer to the end here, but a lot of questions. Are there significant reliability differences between full and half-height tape drives?
There aren't very large differences. The loader mechanism in the drive has a higher reliability life on a full-height drive versus a half-height drive. But if you look at it, on a half-height drive, the loader mechanism is spec'd to where you could do, I think it's somewhere around 50 loads per day per drive and you could last around 4 years. So even though it is a lower reliability spec for that loader mechanism, it's going to work for a very long time in almost anyone's workflow, and it's going to give you a smaller form factor, lower cost option. So the full height drive does have a higher performance spec on an individual drive, but you can put twice as many half height drives in the system, and its reliability is very close, actually.
Right. So the only other thing you mentioned, the performance, the LTO8 half height is at 300 megabyte per second, and the LTO full height is at 360 megabyte per second. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. So slight performance difference between individual drives, but as Matt said, the 40 some odd drives is a lot to have in a single footprint of a single 19-inch rack. All right, moving forward, aside from capacity, how would you compare this library in features to a T200? Okay, T200, again, for those of you not familiar, is one of the mid-range libraries that Spectra manufactures. It is also what we call a TeraPack-based library, so it would move tapes with that 10-pack TeraPack internally, as well as ejecting tapes. But when you put these side by side, what would you say about them, Matt? What are a few things to touch on?
So I think you touched on the big one, is that the T200 is a very different mechanical architecture. So it has the TeraPacks and the transporter, which moves the TeraPack with 10 tapes at a time. That's the same transporter that we use in the T950. So it's an enterprise robotic system. The Spectra Stack has very high reliability. We've tested it to millions of cycles, but it's a different robotic system. The Spectra Stack is going to be a lot more expandable than a T200. So a T200, it can only go up to 200 slots, and if you have up to 8 drives in it, you're actually going to have less than 200 slots. So with Spectra Stack, you can go all the way from 10 on a very smallly configured base unit, all the way up to 560 without having to replace that base chassis. Whereas a T200, you are going to go up to 160 slots if you have 8 drives, and now you're going to have to replace the chassis if you need more capacity. So Spectra Stack does give you some more options in terms of scalability over time, which is really nice for someone. I also want to touch back on that previous question. One thing I want to make clear is that you can also mix full height and half height drives in the Spectra Stack library. So with most other products out there, they support either half height or full height. With Spectra Stack, you can mix those. So if you wanted a partition with full height drives and another partition with half height, you can do that depending on what your workflows and your different environments look like.
Okay, great. So I'm assuming the person that asked about a T200 has one or is familiar with one. So if they had a T200 and say it had full height drives, and they decide once they outgrow that to go to a Spectra Stack, they could move those drives into the Spectra Stack. But as they add new drives, they could add the half height drives as well and just mix and match them.
Yep, that is correct. The T200 does use a different mechanical drive sled than the Spectra Stack, so we would have to take the drives out of the T200, put them in a Spectra Stack drive sled, and then put them into the Spectra Stack. But you still could recoup the investment of the tape drive itself, which is the one of the higher dollar value items that you have on that tape library.
Right. Okay, great. Let's see. And final question, unless we get some more written in here, is the new Blue Vision software only used in Spectra Stack, or can we use the same in T50E? So Blue Vision, the comparison between those two.
Yep. So Blue Vision is for Spectra Stack only, and since it was a new tape library that we came out with, we were able to use a newer controller and some newer parts within the library, which let us also adapt the Blue Vision software to work really well with that hardware. So it's not something that you can take Blue Vision and put it back on T50E. With T50E, you're still going to use Bluescale, and Bluescale is still supported long-term. There's no changes to that plan. So all new features, we'll be adding them to Bluescale as well. And you'll be able to upgrade the Bluescale software on the T50E to include any new features that we come out with that would be used on any of those tape products.
And I know the Blue Vision and Bluescale are very similar, but interestingly, there are a few more features in Bluescale than there are in Blue Vision at this point. So if you're working with that with a T50E, you probably have 2 or 3 more features than you would actually have in Blue Vision today. So that still puts you in a pretty good spot there. One interesting question just came in. It says off topic, but not too much. Why choose Tfiniti over a T950? Now you mentioned that our T50, we've introduced a new value model that has some cost savings on it, including the ability to use the half height drives. The Tfiniti is our dual robotic system. It's the largest tape library we make. It can span to tens of thousands over I believe it's right at 50,000 slots. Is that correct now, Matt?
Yep, that is.
On the Tfiniti. Yep. Between a Tfiniti and a T950, what are the main top 3 tick-offs? You'd go with one versus the other.
So I think you touched the main ones already. The biggest one is that Tfiniti can expand much larger than a T950. A T950 tops out at 10,000 slots, and a Tfiniti goes all the way out to 50,000. We do have a lot of Tfiniti installations that are in that 12 to 25,000 slot range. So a T950 wouldn't have worked in those environments. Tfiniti also has dual robotics. T950 has a single robot, and there's no way to add a second one to a T950 product. So with the dual robotics in Tfiniti, as long as the library is configured correctly, you can see almost 2x the performance with both robots working in parallel. If one of those robots does have a problem at some point, it can go to its respective service bay on its side of the library, and the other robot can still access all tapes. So you have fully redundant robotic systems in a Tfiniti, and you don't in a T950.
Okay, and another question just came in reference to that. It says 50,000 slots in a connected chassis, i.e. one giant library with pass-through ports. And this is really important to note on both the T950 and the Tfiniti, we don't use pass-through ports. So Matt, describe how that happens with libraries.
Yep, so with a T950 or a Tfiniti, we grow in a straight line through a data center. So you can start out with on a T950, a single chassis. With a Tfiniti, 3 chassis, a main frame and 2 service bays. And then you can add expansion chassis over time. Those could be drive expansions or media expansions. There are no pass-throughs. So the robot in a Tfiniti, the 2 robots travel the entire length of the chassis. In a T950, the single robot travels the entire length of the chassis. With a 50,000 slot tape library, you're looking at something that's around 100 feet long. But it does support up to 144 tape drives and 50,000 LTO slots.
And I think one of our latest benchmarks has been around 350 tape exchanges, and that means, grab a tape, put the tape in, take the other tape out, reseat it, over 350 exchanges per hour. So on these large libraries, especially the Tfiniti, and you have 2 robotic arms working simultaneously, even in that length of a tape library, you get tremendous performance. So really 2 different ends of the spectrum with the tape solutions that we have. And I believe that is the end of the questions for us today. So with that being said, Mr. Ninesley, and we do appreciate your time this morning and taking us through this information. For those of you who have joined, there was a question early on. You will get a copy of this presentation as well as a link to the recording of the presentation. If you want to share this with any coworkers or friends, please do. And if you have any other questions, please reach out to spectralogic.com. We'd love to work with you ongoing or in the future. So thanks, everybody, and thank you again, Matt.